The city's finances are divided into a bunch of funds, is what they call them. And for the most part, these things have to stand on their own 2 feet. They're not, you don't commingle money between the 2 funds. For the most part, there's some exceptions to that. And there's like, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 dozen funds. And so you have to go kind of look. And every one of these has, a particular revenue source, particular expenses, and it has, all sorts of special rules that apply to it. The 5 big ones are the general fund. That's where we pay for most of our bills out of that, the police, fire, parks, solid waste, those things you typically think about. The next biggest is the combined utility system, which is the water and sewer system. That's paid for with your water bill that you get every month. We've got this thing that's called the Street and Drainage Fund, which the voters set up. I think it was originally in 2010, and then again in 2018. I think we voted on it a second time. And that is a sort of peculiar one that we actually move money from other places to. You've got the airport fund, which pretty much is a standalone operation controlled by a lot of federal regulations. And then we've got the Visitor Convention Bureau, which it's now called the Houston First Corporation. Those are the 5 big ones. Now, today with John, I want to concentrate on the first 3, the general fund. When you hear the press talk about the city has a deficit, that the budget's not balanced, they're always talking about the general fund. And so we're going to talk mostly about that, but also we need to talk a little bit about the combined utility system because there's some real challenges there, and it's a big fund, a lot of money goes into it. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the drainage fund because that's the thing that we just lost the lawsuit, or the city just lost the lawsuit on, which is creating more problems for the general fund. So, John, the press is reporting that you got and by the way, the city's fiscal year ends on June 30th, and so the budget cycle is in the spring every year, so we're getting ready to enter into the budget cycle right now. So you're getting ready to put together your second budget of your administration, and you got some pretty big challenges. The press is reporting a $330 million deficit. Do you think that's a realistic number, and you think that's what we're really facing as far as trying to get the gap closed?
Yes, and first let me thank you for bringing us together. This is an excellent opportunity to talk about our challenges, and there's so many in the room that I need to personally thank for really shaping and molding my career for the last 50 years, and certainly supported me to give me the opportunity to lead the city. First, Bill, and I certainly enjoyed the first session, if things were working right, folks, I would be in Austin in the Senate. I was recruited by Houston to come back and try to meet our challenges and fix some obvious shortcomings in infrastructure and public safety, and certainly finances is where it starts. So I just wanted you to know that we have a great city, great people, but we have some major challenges like most cities do. But we're meeting our challenges. I'll be more than glad to share as part of our discussion what I discovered, how we hit the ground running. I've got a great team in place, but we've got some really challenges in front of us. Bill, you kind of warned me about it before I got in the race. But I do believe with experience and relationships in Austin and across our region, we're going to get there because we have no other choice. But the real problem is we've been governed by spin for a number of years. Sylvester said, he was leaving a surplus. No, Sylvester. You ran the last 2 budget cycles out of COVID ARP money. So when I got there, we had a $160 million shortfall that really hadn't been shared with the public. I was faced with the lawsuit from the firefighters. They'd gone 8 years without a contract. We were dangerously low of recruits and staffing. Response time for EMS was dangerously low. Trial was set for March. Our attorney said, not a good case. We looked at what judges had ruled in other jurisdictions for first responders, similar lawsuit. The partnership was saying it would take $800 million to $1.2 million to settle or get out of court, or that was the exposure if we went to court. So we hit the ground running. We met with the firefighters. We got a reasonable settlement of $650 million. We were also able to get a 5-year contract going forward. So it was a $650 million settlement, not $1.5 billion that some insist, my political critics. I've had people running against me since day one, but we don't worry about them. We're just trying to get the job done. So the morale and the recruiting, the first cadet class I spoke to last March had 31 cadets, and most of them would tell you, we're just getting our credits and our life certification at Houston, then we're moving to another jurisdiction where benefits and retirement was better. I spoke last Thursday to 76 cadets, so we're going in the right direction. Was it expensive? That was about a $30 million, we sold bonds for the 650. That's $30 million additional cost. With inflation and some other salary increases at HPD, we were sitting at about 240 shortfall. Now, you know, people drill me, how are you gonna pay for it? We work around the clock. We know what we need to do, and we started an efficiency review the day I got there. Chris Newport's worked in other administrations. He's so quick. Our finance director, Melissa Tukowski, very competent. We know what we're doing. It is tough. Don't underestimate trying to balance the books. Last year we had some remaining federal funding that we plowed into this year's budget. But lo and behold, we think working with Metro, getting some resources, collaborating with the county, we were cutting expenses. Tom Ramsey's paying for half the cost of city streets that are in his precinct. Unheard of. During the debris pickup after Beryl, I could have gone and raised property taxes, but I've made a commitment that I won't raise taxes or fees until we eliminate waste, duplication, and corruption. We can talk about all three. So I could have raised the property taxes as the statute allows. The county jumped on it immediately. I knew my commitment. I still know there's waste, duplication, and conflicts and corruption, so I wasn't going there. I went to Austin, met with Governor Abbott, told him what I was facing. I didn't want to raise taxes, and he and the LBB, Legislative Budget Board, gave us $50 million for debris pickup. That's what's new to city government, the cooperation and collaboration with whether it's the county or the state. It's really benefiting Houston. But going forward, we thought we had our arms around the 240, and then the lawsuit was resolved. Actually, the Supreme Court said they wouldn't hear it, so it went back down to the appellate courts. So we owe drainage fee about $100 million more. That's at 340. That's where we come up with that figure. The good news is, again, relationships matter. We've met with the plaintiffs, Bob Jones, who I've known for years, and Alan Watson, who served on Metro. I've known them. They understand I'm doing the best I can. They understand our challenges. They also understand we just released an efficiency study, which we need to talk about. I said, guys, I need a year or two to implement the savings from the efficiency study. So I haven't talked about it much publicly because it's delicate. They have some expectations that we're working on. They want the Metro 0.25% mobility fund spent totally on mobility, where previous administrations had used that kind of for general operations. So if I pull their $125 million out of general operations, I got to find something to backfill it. Then they say, well, you can't use Metro money, so it gets tougher. But the good news is they have extended the payday for about 2 years. Gives us time to work with Austin to see if we can find additional resources. The efficiency study, as I said when I got there, and the benefit of serving in the office is I've worked with 9 mayors. I'm a Houstonian, high school, U of H, raised my 2 daughters and grandkids. I've watched the difficulty of city government. The TERS, you know, we can spend all day talking about the good and the bad. If the city was doing this job, historically, you'd have never even heard of TERS. So we've had challenges for years. The can's been kicked down the road repeatedly. Other mayors sell off property. They use federal funding. And my dear mentor, Bob Lanier, got $500 million from Metro. I'm going to tell you, I was wondering if he's still a hero. He killed the monorail that Kathy wanted to go from downtown to the Heinz buildings and the Galleria. Mayor Lanier said no. She let him go. She was stupid enough to go to his Christmas party the same day. So, guess what? He ran for mayor. But he got $500 million and put it in the police overtime. We're looking at a lot of things that I've observed through the years. But at some point in time, well, let's talk about the efficiency study. So we saw in the spring, it's bigger than us. There's 23,000 employees, 24 departments. We needed help. So in May, somebody the other day said, well, you're following Washington. I said, no, they're following us. We signed a contract with Ernst & Young in May and turned them loose, and they rolled it out last week. Houston has more employees than any other major city per capita. 2,800 people are eligible for retirement. 40% of our supervisors supervise 3 or fewer people. It's pretty startling. We believe that this efficiency study is going to save us almost enough to be solvent. Yeah, that's a big statement. Now, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy. The 2,800 that are eligible for retirement, in about a month, we're going to give them incentives to retire. Some will accept, like 6 months lump sum to go home. Some will. Some can't live off their retirement, and some, why retire? If you're getting paid and essentially you're not doing anything, you're kind of retired on the job. So anyway, let me also add, as I'm critical of the lack of production across city government, is we've got some fine employees, okay? Don't leave here saying, well, Whitmire's really critical. We got career people that have made this a great city. But I'm trying to put, not trying, although I still have a couple of department heads we can do better. But Public Works, when I got there, folks, and one of the problems and the frustration is, before I could start implementing some of my policies, I had to get the right team. Public Works, when I got there, was on the news every night. Amy Davis did a fine job out at KPRC, $10,000 water bills. The sensors were all broken. When I got there, the plan was a 5-year plan to replace over 100,000 sensors. I found a can-do person in Public Works, Randy Maka, who happened to not be an engineer. The job requirement by ordinance is that you have to have an engineer running Public Works. Hell, he's got 300 that work for him. All I needed was an administrator. So I had to work and overcome the opposition from the Engineering Association. No, we want an engineer in that position. Randy was doing such a great job, and I got counsel to make him the Public Works Director. That's a 5-year plan. He completed it the other day in a year. We've replaced 100,000 sensors in people's front yards. So from day one, it's been a challenge. But I knew it when I went in. I could never probably make you really understand the demand of the job is 7/24. I do get calls in the middle of the night. Shot officer, 40-inch water main broken on Fannin, and if we don't get a crew over there before 8, Methodist is going to have to cancel its operations. It's nonstop. But people ask me, are you having fun? I said, no. But I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it. Keep in mind, before I took the job, I'd been in public service 50 years, 10 in the House, 40 in the Senate. It's a calling. 22-year-olds are not supposed to get elected to the legislature. I do believe divine intervention, and I think I was called to this job. Now, I'm going to do everything I can. I could run through the whole list of other challenges. March, I got a call from Chief Fenner, who we believe certainly is a fine person and a good chief. He said, I'm coming back to Houston. The press has found out we've got suspended investigations, which I had no clue. He gets to town. We start looking at the numbers. Folks, it's 260,000 in March suspended HPD cases. Of course, you can declare one safe Houston, which we all knew different. Public safety was my highest priority for running. You can't go as mayor with the chief and walk through the Galleria for 30 minutes and declare it safe, which was happening, spin. So we tackled that. Then we had the Richo storm. We had the Kingwood flood, Beryl. So I've been so busy with essentially crisis. The Lakewood shooting unnerved the community for days. So we are just now really launching a lot of our initiatives. The efficiency study is certainly going to pay off, and we're going to have a more efficient, modern city. But it's going to be controversial. Certainly the municipal employee union is going to be critical. But the good news is I've been there, done that, and that's just part of the job. Now we're going to look at the TERS. We've had our eyes on a couple midtown as two administrators under indictment. We're working with law enforcement and investigative bodies. There is a huge presence of the FBI looking at city, local, and most of our agencies. We do cooperate. We had a city employee 2 weeks ago plead guilty to stealing water funds. She was handing out $3 and $4 million contracts to people that didn't even have a business. So I got this morning, the Housing Authority built a $130 million mid-rise bill. You did an excellent job, and Greg Guggen of exposing it. You got a completed 130 million, 300 room paid for by taxpayers sitting over there empty because of EPA environmental concerns. They knew they were building on environmentally unsound, dangerous area, but a conflict of interest, a relationships got that built. I'll be darned if we really know what we're going to do that if we don't get a clearance from the EPA. Horrible. So I could go forward. The TERS, Midtown's been run by conflicts of interest for years. Garnett, Coleman, who pretty much ran it's got 450 lots purchased by the TERS, about $40 million of property that was essentially put in isolation, were allowed to accumulate because he didn't want gentrification in the museum district and certainly as it approaches Third Ward. Huge expenditures for maintaining those 400 lots that were paid to people that were insiders. So there's a lot to clean up. We're on the right path, but we've got a lot to do. Now, where did I get some additional resources? Talked to the Lieutenant Governor last night. We're trying to get additional resources coming out of Austin, whether we look at toll road authority money, and of course that's controversial with my friends at the county, but they've got about a $300 million surplus. The toll road comes through Houston. The toll road security is furnished by HPD, first responders, police, and EMS. We just want our share. You could look at the Metro funding. Metro is sitting on $1 billion today. They had accumulated the money to match the federal funds for these additional post-oak rapid transit lines that the ridership projections do not justify spending. So we do want to collaborate with Metro and get some of their operational money. You think the city's inefficient, you ought to look at Metro. When I was sworn in, they had 31 executive vice presidents, 31 making $250,000 to $300,000 a year, working at home. And Elizabeth Brock, who I've talked to for a long time this morning, she's rolling out her vision and our team's vision on Monday about how to reduce the waste and duplication over at Metro, make it safe, clean, on time, and have Metro shelters and bus stops quit being shelters for our homeless. The homeless is a major concern that we're trying to address. We're appealing to all levels of government and certainly the philanthropic community, help us get the homeless out of public space. So I enjoyed the early conversation about TERS. We're on it. We actually have an idea of disbanding the Midtown tours. The problem is the debt, their assets. Uptown, I only learned this week, is in financial difficulty because they overcommitted to the Memorial Park project. The Kinders put in $100 million with the understanding it'd be matched by Uptown. Uptown's running out of money, so it's a real serious dilemma. But we've got a very transparent, honest, get-it-done group of directors, and that's the only reason I ran. Wasn't looking for a job. I enjoyed being a state senator, the longest serving, still getting things done. Last session, we moved the murderer charges defendants up to the front of the line of the backlog. You won't believe what we're going to do at the George Brown to get ready for the Republican National Convention in 28. Do you think I don't know what I'm doing? I went before we needed the state's money of hotel occupancy tax. We called it an entertainment district. The state gets about 3% of every hotel bill. Over 30 years, it'll be over $3 billion. George Brown was not being competitive with Dallas and Austin and other venues. And Central Houston needs improvement, sidewalks, streets, you name it. So obviously the city came to me last session because they knew I could work in this Republican body where I'm the only Democratic chair. And there'll probably never be another one. So we passed it. So I was going to share with the insiders. So I go before the Republican, and the Republicans control everything, all the committees. Birdwell out of Waco, they're all my friends. And they want, quite frankly, Houston to do well, partly because it's a great city and means so much to the state. But really, relationships matter. So I'm sitting there trying to ask them for hundreds of millions of state revenue. First, they don't need it because they're running such a surplus even 2 years ago. So in closing, I said, members, I've got to have this resource. I wasn't mayor. I think they knew I was going to ring them. The talk was out to get ready for the Republican convention in 28. And I plan to be the mayor and welcome everyone to Houston. So, oh Lord. So we got the money. But look at the George Brown. You won't recognize it. They're going to roll out next month. It's planned. Joby Allen is helping us clean up the city. George Brown will be extended by about a third south. There'll be a lot of retail opportunity, probably another convention hotel. And the real exciting thing is 45 and 59 are going underneath the ground behind George Brown. That'll create a 30-acre green space for future enjoyment, recreation. And then they'll do an east side entrance to George Brown. So it will completely unite downtown with the East End. So there's a lot of exciting things happening. We've been discovered, and we've just got to get ready for it. At some point, probably next fall, I don't know when, I'm going to come before you and I'm going to say I've done everything I can. I've cut out the waste, duplication, conflicts of interest, even criminal activity. Now I need your help. I don't know in what form it will take. Perhaps an exception to the revenue cap for public safety. I've got a police contract this spring. We've got to recruit more officers. Public safety is still my highest priority. How are we getting by now with our shortage of officers? Collaboration. We have about 75 DPS officers in Houston today. That was an issue in my campaign. People said, oh, you're bringing in state troopers. Yep, you're right. I'm bringing in their helicopters, their task force, their resources, their forensic labs. We're collaborating with more law enforcement. The constables in our area have never been so willing to work with us. We're trying to get the sheriff's office to come inside Houston city limits. You know, we're sitting in Harris County right now. You're paying for that sheriff's office. Try calling to come inside Houston. That's an old model. That goes back to squatty line days where the county government started at the city limits. We don't have the luxury of doing that. And let me go ahead and, while I'm on a roll, we don't have the luxury of two of everything. We don't need two library systems. We don't need new park systems. We don't need a Houston Health Department and a Harris Health Department. We're serving the same people. We got 2 animal shelters, one for the county, one for the city. Neither one works worth a darn. So where I'm going forward is make city government work. And I want you to take an interest in city government like never before. I know you study what's going on in Washington, and we follow the state legislature. Folks, the play is the city of Houston and our adjoining jurisdictions. I spoke to the County Association of Mayors. See, Houston's never had a relationship in recent years with state government. They wouldn't talk. Wouldn't even take each other's call because it was so partisan. The benefit is I talked to Patrick last night. I'm going to be in the governor's office at 9:15 Tuesday. And I'm not only going to talk about Houston, I'm going to talk about the region. Speaking of the region, the Houston water treatment plant furnishes 5 million people their water. It'd scare the hell out of you if you took a tour of it, which I have. Scott, nobody talks about it. We have no duplication, no backup system to the water. We got plenty of water in Lake Livingston, Conroe, Lake Houston, 250 years of water supply. But it comes down in an open canal to just this side of Galena Park, and the plant was built in 1954. Scary. If we went down, Med Center, no water. Our venues, no water. The refineries depend on the water supply from Houston. It's a homeland security issue. So we're going to Washington, we're working with our senators to try to put an understanding, and I'll be talking to the governor about it Tuesday. We're going to get some money this session for the plant, but it's another Band-Aid. We've got to get busy and have a reliable water supply with a backup, and we don't have that day. Now, here's the problem. Nobody's talked about it. This is not a new problem, but it's hard for the partnership and others, leadership, civic groups, to talk about, we really don't have a reliable water treatment plant. If we lose a pump, we have people sleep on the floor out there during the storms because if you lose pressure, then you go into a boiling water situation. And then if it really stays off and doesn't come back on, you're in a heck of a mess. So we're getting some money for some more patchwork, but we've got to look to Houston's future. I was saying a while ago, which we all know, we've been discovered. I would predict a third of the residents that lost their homes in California, they're not rebuilding. I can tell you from the U-Haul studies, the destination is Texas. So here's another issue that we got to think about. Somebody want to guess how many people do not live in Houston but come to Houston every day to work from Pearland, Katy, every direction? We have 2.3 million residents. Every day we grow by 700,000 people. Unbelievable. The city of Atlanta comes to Houston from our suburbs every day to work. That's the reason our traffic is what it is. That's the reason the strain on our first responders. We absorb another city each day that goes back to suburbs. Now, what we need to do is improve the quality of life, which means schools, public safety, streets, drainage, and get them to want to live in Houston. Bob Lanier talked about this and did a really fine job of improving parks and streets. I'm going to continue that. You give me time, and we improve the quality of life issues, get the finances straight, safe, clean, and we'll have people that want to live. We got to worry about our property values downtown. Bill pointed out this first year that we've had a loss in value. Part of that is because people have not returned from COVID and the demand for downtown space. Chevron, praise the Lord, relocated here and went downtown. You have to always worry about going to the suburbs with some of our expansion and attraction of major corporations. But Houston's it. I'm here to tell you. We've got some challenges, but we need to all be fired up, take an interest in city government, hold people accountable, and nothing can hold us back. I really think that it's exciting times to be a Houstonian. Yes, sir.
The last few years, it seems like a lot of migration is coming to Dallas and Austin, and that the knock on Houston is every time it rains, we have flood.
Sure.
A lot of it's county, a lot of it's HGAP area, but what's being done to keep our roads from flooding when it rains in that state?
Well, a lot of that's Mother Nature, of course, you know. But obviously, our drainage is important. You know, we did a $2.5 billion county flood control issue about 3 years ago. They say they've gone through it. We just got to quit wasting money. But drainage is a major factor. Now, let me address the Austin Plano. You realize they're not going in Austin. They're not going, I said Plano, you said Dallas. They're going to Plano. Kentucky Fried Chicken. Oh, they're coming to Texas. And I kept waiting to see where. Plano. So the major cities experience some of the experience we have. They go to the suburbs. First, they get billed quicker. I'm working like the devil. I have home builders tell me, we ain't going to Houston because we can't get a permit. We can't get paid if we do city projects. So just improving city government will go a long ways toward attracting people to Houston. But our suburbs are very attractive. Most of them have better schools, more affordability. You can get more home out in Cypress than you can anywhere probably in Houston where we want a comparable house. The schools, can't begin to tell you, I've said for years, as even in the Senate, how HISD goes is how Houston will go. And it's still a mess out there. And I tell the people that are criticizing the process, the more you criticize Miles, the longer he'll be here. You got to remember this is for the kids. And I understand his people skills are not worth a darn. Okay, I got that. I've got a little taste of it too. The second week I was in office, I'd met him back in November as a senator. I said, hey, you got to better explain doing away with the library. So, you know, that's just not going over very good. So I found out one morning on a Saturday in coffee, he didn't give a damn what I thought as long as serving senator, but that's okay. I was doing a fine job without him before I ever met him. But I called him the second week I was on the job because we were having that Arctic freeze, and actually we ended up shutting down city government on Tuesday. So I called him on Monday as I was beginning to announce, don't go to work on Tuesday. Freeway's going to be iced over. All the area schools had already announced closing except HISD. I needed to know, so I called him around 2 on that Monday afternoon. I was the week after I'd been sworn in. And I said, Mr. Superintendent, we're fixing to announce no city government tomorrow, stay at home. All the school districts have announced closing. What are your plans? He said, well, Mayor, you need to know education is a necessity. And I got to listening to that. I said, you know, Mr. Superintendent, you need to save that for a clear day, okay? I'm dealing. If you have a bus come off one of our overpasses, you'll regret it. So will you let me know and really consider serious? He said, I'll call you back at 5. He called back at 5, and we successfully closed the schools and probably saved lives across the city. So here's the bottom line, though. We've got to continue to focus on the success of HISD. And what people don't understand, he's doing exactly what Austin expects him to do. There was waste, duplication, and corruption at HISD. The FBI was routinely coming in and out of the administration building. So he's done it in other places. I'm not defending his style or his lack of inclusion, but he's got a model that the state leadership likes. You can raise hell about it, and the teachers union is the #1 hell raiser, but it's not going to change. All you're doing is extending how long he's going to be here, and if you turn parents against him, it's just harming the kids. Now, people say, well, why don't you get involved? Lord knows I've got a full plate. It's not my responsibility, but I am committed that HISD's got to improve, because that is one of the real reasons why folks are going to Katy and Fort Bend and you name it. You can almost identify those. Will tell you they're going because Cypress Fairbanks has a really good school district. Yes,
We
sir.
got about 10 minutes. Y'all see more questions? Yes.
Sir.
Joe, go ahead.
The worst day a few years ago was when Bill King lost by just a few thousand votes.
And I probably wouldn't be here.
You've been there instead of the mayor, your job would have been so much easier. Yesterday, Jay Seidman talked to our group. Unbelievable, this talk is unbelievable. You still have some serious problems with the county commissioners. They control the judges, and you're going to not be very successful in crime unless you can stop these judges from doing what they're doing. So how do you minimize the power of Rodney Yee as the other person in the hopes that maybe you can work together with?
Would you
I
prefer
talk
that I
about
ask
it
that question?
everywhere I go. We will never have enough police officers if we don't fix the broken criminal justice system in Harris County. Criminal justice is a system. Starts with the street officer, takes to intake. The first problem we got is the bond system right there. And Joan Huffman's doing everything she can. We need to talk to our area legislators. The U of H guy, the rapist, they took him down there and let him go. Some mix up, they claim in paper. But once they do have him, they gave him a $15,000 bond. It is unheard of in my 30 years of chairing criminal justice that you give a capital murderer a bond. That's the worst of the worst. He knows if he's convicted, he's either going to spend the rest of his life in prison or be executed. It's dangerous to us. It is dangerous to law enforcement because they've got to apprehend him because they're not stopping with that first crime. Career criminals, that is their profession. And that gets back to that spin, One Safe Houston. The gun buyback. Do you think the first crook really went over and turned in his number?
Hey, John, I want to talk about the bond stuff for a
But-
second.
but-
Because let's talk about the bond, what's going on in the legislature, because
Okay,
the Senate
Joan is
passed
trying-
it, right?
It passed the Senate. She needs a constitutional amendment, which means 100 votes in the House. It will be very difficult, largely because of the Harris County delegation. Here's the problem. You've got judges that do not believe, literally do not believe in holding people accountable. Their previous profession was defense attorneys or civil rights lawyers. Now, I made a name for myself by being tough on crime and then smart on crime. I travel the country being asked to speak. You lock up those that you're afraid of, but not those that you're mad at. It works. I was robbed at gunpoint. The guy got 25 years. If you use a gun, you ought to be held accountable. But we've got 1,600 people charged with murder. Half of them are on the streets of Houston on bond, or we don't even know where they are because they didn't show up for their next appearance. It is so unfair to the victims, crime victims, families. The lady that her husband was a deputy sheriff, Aguilar, what's her name, Paul? Husband got in a shootout because they were trying to steal his catalytic converter when they went out on the store parking lot. She has to go down there and face the murder of her husband because the cases are reset. Time is the defendant's best friend because someday judgment will come up. But we got judges, now, as I said a while ago, with city employees. There are some good judges working hard, but elections matter. You have to identify, and there were some good replacements last fall. I will be more outspoken about it because my police officers are doing a hell of a good job. I rode with the chief last Saturday night from 9 to 2. Young officers, they're fired up. They want to work for me. And this new police chief, Diaz, I think he's the best chief in America. It was the toughest thing I had to do because Chief Renner and I were friends. He'd be at my breakfast table at 7 in the morning talking about the suspended cases. but it reached a point where he was becoming part of the issue. So he retired, and I knew Noe Diaz from 20 years of working together. He was a ranger. He was embedded for 6 years with HPD. I needed somebody from outside the department to really start holding people accountable. He's kicking tail. He's out there. Wherever he is right now, he's working to make this a safer city. Got a great fire chief, too. Chief Munoz, been in the department 24 years. He's a hands-on chief. We're moving in the right direction with public safety, but you are right on. If we don't get county government, folks, it's so broken over. They got 10,000 inmates. Some have been there for 4 and 5 years. Jails are not designed for long-term confinement. It's in and out, maybe 180 days. Get them to trial. If they're innocent, let them go. If they're guilty, that's why we've got such a surplus of prison beds right now. We've never reached the level of confinement at the state level that we had before COVID. You don't think we got less crime, do you? It's because the courts have still not back to the level of work that they deserve. Some of them are still doing their courts by Zoom. I know it's hard to believe, but they're still having hearings by Zoom, and they just postpone. But the real danger is 800 people charged with murder or capital murder that are loose on the street. They're probably sleeping in this morning, then they'll get up after a while and go back. That's the ones that terrorize our communities. The ones you see on the news going in and holding up a convenience store, those are the repeat bad guys that need to be locked up, and they're not because the courts are not working.
Let me jump in about this bond, because it's really important that it passes the House. The House killed it last time. The representative that represents where we're sitting right now is probably the person that killed it. Paul Castro. Paul, stand up for a second. I want everybody to see Paul. Some of y'all know Paul from What's Your Point. Paul's been a huge advocate on this issue. He lost his son in a homicide here 3 years ago, and he's led the charge on getting this fixed. So if this is an issue you want to engage on, this is the man you need to see and talk to. But we've got to put pressure on the House members. The Harris County delegation will decide whether this happens or not, and that the state constitution bond provision needs to be amended.
Let me address why it's in the Constitution, because that's what they hide behind. The state constitution said everyone's entitled to the bond. It's in the Constitution, and they hide behind it. There are exceptions for the murder of a police officer, a child, and others, but they're still hiding behind it. So about 4 years ago, Paul, I was thinking, in a conservative state like this, why is everybody entitled to a bond even if you're a repeat felon? It's the Texas Revolution. In 1836, when the settlers came to Texas, the Mexican government would lock them up and never let them out, never have a hearing or anything that's similar to a bond. So when we wrote our first state constitution, and when we revised it in 1876, it says everyone's entitled to a bond. Obviously, you and I know it's outlived its usefulness. You ought to take everyone, have a hearing, determine if they're a public threat, and then either deny bond or give them a bond that they can't afford.
Okay, let's take some more questions. We're going to run out of time here. Yes, back here, Little Sharp.
Small businessman, I also work with small businesses. One of our biggest challenges is the permit office. Anything we do with build outs or helping you, businesses or whatever, every single time it drags out. It should be 8 months, 6 months, and it makes it so it's unattainable. And what's being done?
Well, we got a new director of permitting last spring, and I'd be glad to visit with you. I believe it's moving in the right direction. It was one of the number one complaints, certainly when I'd go around retailer or construction folks. So I'm aware of who's doing it, and it still could improve, but it's headed in the right direction. And I'll be glad to visit with you if you can identify in your mind or your experience where it's bogging.
Other questions?
Abated properties. We have properties all over the city that have been abated, have been exempted off tax rolls, right? They're not paying their taxes on that. It's that burden goes up to the rest of the community. I want to agree, grass, these properties that have been exempted and written down to zero for the tax values and get them back on the tax.
I'll be glad to visit with you. Give me a specifics on that. I just don't hear that in general. So if you've got a specific piece of property that's off tax rolls, let me know. Over here.
What about taxing marijuana to help the financial condition of the city?
Some days that sounds like a hell of an idea. First of all, you know, I've had, even he was a senator for years, people will advocate that, legalizing, personally. You know, I just don't waste my time on things that aren't going to happen. You know, we're not, first of all, you'd be surprised at the venues and meetings I go into, somebody's smoking the stuff. No, not based on the way they acted. I smell it. But as long as the legislature has its current makeup, and certainly I know Dan Patrick is so committed to blocking that. It's just, ma'am, it's over my pay grade. Actually, they don't make more than I do. But anyway, the leadership in Austin, current makeup legislature, that's not going to happen. Neither is gambling going to happen. In fact, if you read the morning news, it takes 2 minutes to go through that. Bill says, Whitmire, why do you even read the Chronicle? You're right. But the lottery now is under attack. So, you know, elections matter. We're seeing it in Washington. You see it in the state. And for years, we've lived with city government that was neglecting a lot of their duties. That's about as nice a thing as I can say. I'm trying to, I listened this morning, I told somebody about the turfs. I spend a tremendous amount of time on turfs. Some are good, some are bad. Some have huge conflicts of interest. But I got about 200 other things. You know, Mike, what was your reporter sheet? Mike Morris does great work, but he got the luxury of spending days, if not weeks, on that, and I don't. They back up coming into the mayor's office, departments, dealing with lack of resources, personnel problems, working on major projects. You know, here's what I'll share with you. I get tired of it. I go to meetings pretty regular about getting ready for the World Cup. You know, the partnership, Central Houston, Houston First, the sports authority. Everybody's focused on it. We're going to be on the international stage, and it's going to be like 7 Super Bowls in a row. I routinely stop the meetings because we're talking about getting Metro ready, getting homeless taken care of, infrastructure. And I'll stop and say, why don't we talk like this every day for Houstonians? It's just amazing. If we could exert the energy and the planning for everyday quality of life issues in Houston, while we get excited about our major events, which we do well, it'll be the World Cup, and then we'll roll into the Republican National Convention. But folks, you know, the general counsel, as you can't imagine, I'm just not a show pony. There's 93 consulate general's office here from around the world, and we're an international city. But these consulate generals are here to network and entertain and get a proclamation and meet with the mayor. I don't have time. So I'm trying to take care of our neighborhoods. There's been no foreign travel on my agenda, and there won't be. You know, I want to be in Meyerland, in Oak Forest, in Acres Home, in Denver Harbor. I enjoy what I'm doing. I look forward to going to work every day. The only thing is the number one challenge I have is pace myself. People tell me, if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of others. So I'm working 7/24. We're headed in the right direction, Bill. And thank you for your advice and counsel. Bill's been a real friend and steady. His data and his experience is so valuable, as so many of you. I see Charles Foster here. There's a lot of anxiety in our community, but I'm here to tell you, everybody stay calm. We're going to fix our problems because we're the greatest city, I think, certainly in the United States. Look who's ahead of us in the condition area. New York. Oh, my goodness. He needs a good defense attorney.
Not anymore.
Well, as long as he cooperates, he's okay. He got him a good plea bargain. L.A. has no leadership, and Chicago is so mismanaged. And you know, it's amazing. Y'all won't believe it. I get a weekly report on the number of murders. And I don't know what the hell they're doing in Chicago, but don't go up there. And I actually asked my law enforcement, I mean, we are about in New York, which I think is another interesting phenomenon. We have about the same murder rate as New York, and they're so much larger. We're about where LA is. Chicago, 2 and 3 times what we're doing. And my law enforcement, my chief and people who talk nationally say it's the gang activity in Chicago. They just really have shootouts up there. But anyway, we got a great city.
Let's get a couple more questions in, because we're kind of running out of time. Yeah, back here.
Or,
Homeless.
yeah.
If you keep doing the same thing over and over again, not getting appropriate results, there's a link to that. Housing first doesn't work. It hasn't worked, not gonna work.
What's that? House first?
Housing first.
You know, I agree with you, because while they're waiting to get them in the house, they're backed up on the street, and there are a lot of folks, and we've had 12 warming centers the last 2 weeks, and I've made most of them. It's the mental health condition is really, really driving the homeless. So let me just tell you, I spend a lot of time on the homeless issue. It's mental health. They don't even, some of them want to get out of these elements because they don't even know they're miserable. So we've got to do better. Austin and the nation needs to do a better job on community mental health. And then the criminal justice system. You can't imagine when you start talking, as I do, to the homeless, where was your last address? How'd you get here? Harris County, Paul, unfortunately, they're so crowded at the jail. Tonight at midnight, they will let out about 300 people in the back door there on San Jacinto. Because, see, they get credit for the next day. Tomorrow they've served their sentence. So instead, and I've raised hell for years and haven't been successful, at least wait till daylight. You know, give them a fighting chance when the sun's out. They come out with no money, no family, nowhere to go, and they get on Metro's rail. Then they get rearrested for being a vagrant, and welcome, it's a revolving door. Huntsville lets parolees out with no place to go. With their record, they can't even rent a place. So the criminal justice has to do better with reentry, because they're ending up on the streets as vagrants and homeless. But we're working our tail off. The one home first is a great concept. Everyone brags about it. But many of these people, you put them in a house or apartment, they can't provide for themselves. So what we're doing, and we're hot on the track right now, someone, Twala Carter, actually, I'm going to give counsel, and I've got some really fun. Councilman Ramirez has been a great ally on solving some of these problems. Joel Osteen's father's church out on East Houston is a 60-acre campus. They got a sanctuary with 8,000 people. But here's the exciting thing, and it's available. It's been run by Bishop Hilliard, African-American minister, bishop, that had like 4 campuses, and they've lost their membership. We're trying to negotiate and talk to the philanthropic community. They've been running a summer camp. If you go out there right now, you may not want to leave. They got 500 bunk beds where they ran a young people, a youth camp during the summer. Unbelievable. Raw land. You could have gardens. You could do other city services like a sobriety center. Maybe get the state interested in some juvenile programs, one-stop shopping for city and county services. So I just want to assure you, I know it's broken. Our goal is to get the homeless out of the public spaces. I go down Memorial, I live by Memorial Park, so I go in Memorial every day. I turn right there at Bagby, and it's the first thing I see and probably the last thing I see when I go to work. United Airlines did a study 18 months ago asking their employees, what would be an incentive? Why don't they want to come back to corporate headquarters? You want to know what they said in their survey? Their number one concern and why they didn't want to come back to corporate headquarters at Smith and Pierce is they didn't want to deal with the homeless. So it's an economic issue as well as a humanity issue. The bus station was there, and it's its proximity to the corporate headquarters. They just a lady told me the other day, these are the things just reason I don't rest. She's a nurse. She bought a condo in Midtown. She works in the med center. Her plan was to live in Midtown, get to the rail, and go to the med center. She doesn't feel safe getting from her condo to the rail. So folks, I'm a Houstonian. I live it every day. I get away from my security. I still drive myself to restaurants to see my grandkids in Garden Oaks. Routinely, when I go somewhere, I call Public Works 5 times usually. It's about a 5-call drive from my house by Memorial Park to Whitney's in Garden Oaks with broken water mains. I called them. I was telling somebody that yesterday. They said, "Well, do they get fixed?" I said, "Hell yeah, they get fixed." This morning we have 1,000 broken water mains in Houston. That's the neglect of a great city like this, and we're not a poor city. City finances have been mismatched. The revenue cap factors in there. We're at 3.5% inflation and growth. We're the only city under that 3.5%. The states is 4.5%. When they passed the states, they were supposed to, my friend Bettencourt was supposed to take us up to the state, but he said no, the citizens voted it. That's about $70 million a year that we start out short than other cities. Then other cities have revenue sources that we don't. Austin owns its electric company, so they sell electricity. San Antonio has a gas utility that they own that they sell. So I'm going to be transparent. We're looking for resources. We're doing efficiency studies, but at some day, I'm going to come before you and say I need some help, and then we'll see what form that takes.
Okay, we got like one more question here. You've already had one, so let me get somebody else. Yeah, back here. Mark.
You know,
All right.
Mark, you're the one that screwed this place up.
Absolutely. I accept full responsibility. But I got a tough question for you. Houston Texans football team won a new stadium. What do you think about taxpayer and public funding?
Obviously, that's a non-starter. I wish you'd asked me that earlier.
That's a great question. That's funny.
That's a non-starter. I do hear they're serious. I mean, they look at Fort Bend, but listen, don't get me started. That's controlled, owned by the county. They've completely neglected it, and it's a major asset. They're a major business, and of course, the rodeo is right there, hampered by the same poor management coming out of the county. The county facility corp that runs the Dome and NRG and the convention halls, the rodeo arenas, they need to do their job. And the county's not short on resources at all. They just need to focus and realize how important that venue is.
All right, we all will thank John for coming in today, spending all this time with us. Appreciate it, buddy.
Okay.